The tomatoes look ripe, with only days to go before the official end of summer. Peterborough residents are anxious to get a share of the crop from one of the last harvests of the year. But it's not just fruits and veggies on shoppers' minds. There's a federal election days away that will plant a new government in Ottawa. And there's no better place to take the political pulse of a community than a farmer's market.
The politicians have to be responsible for their actions. So if they're going to promise something, they got to figure out how they're going to pay for it.
Housing, that's a big thing.
More money for farmers.
More money for farmers?
The price of food. Oh no, I'm not going to be on TV, I hope.
The riding of Peterborough Kawartha is a mix of urban and rural voters. It's home to roughly 120,000 residents. And when it comes to federal elections, the riding has a reputation to act as a crystal ball.
People here are pretty proud of the fact that the riding is a so-called bellwether riding. Always votes federally with ends up putting in the governing party into power in this riding, with one exception, the early 1980s. So it's a party that has been predictable, and in fact, at least through the early 1990s, was somewhat representative of the country.
Come federal elections, Peterborough Kawartha has always ended up with either a Liberal or Conservative heading to Ottawa. This time around, the four main parties are all represented by women. Liberal incumbent Maryam Monsef won the riding in 2015 and again in 2019, beating Conservative candidate Michael Skinner by 3,000 votes. Now, as Canadians endure a fourth wave of the COVID pandemic, Monsef believes the Liberals are the only party equipped to resuscitate the nation.
My vision for my community and for my country is we finish the fight against the pandemic. We bump up our vaccination numbers. I'm double vaxxed, and I'm going to continue to lead by example there. That we have a better appreciation for the value and the worth of essential workers who, for very little pay, put everything at risk so that they could take care of the rest of us. And, you know, on the other side of this thing, there are a lot of broken people who are isolated during the pandemic, who are hurting, wounds that opened up because of everything from Black Lives Matter to the children in the graves. Those wounds and that trauma needs to be healed. And for women, like, this is the first time that the business community is advocating for things feminists have been advocating for decades, like $10 a day childcare. So this is a moment for us to leap and close the wage gap, and there's more of us in decision-making tables than ever before, and so let's make it count.
Monsef is the first ever Afghan Canadian to secure a seat in the House of Commons.
We'll work hard on $10 a day childcare for you, little one.
Thank you very much.
Mon
Good luck with
plaisir.
the election.
Merci. I will need it. Bye, baby.
She's also the first Muslim to be appointed Minister of a department. She served as Canada's Minister for Democratic Institutions, Minister of International Development, Minister for Women and Gender Equality, and Minister of Rural Economic Development. But she hasn't served without some turbulence. Early in her career on Parliament Hill, critics pounced on her over confusion about where exactly she was born. And in late August, Monsef became a target again after referring to the Taliban as our brothers.
I want to take this opportunity to speak to our brothers, the Taliban. We call on you to ensure the safe and secure passage of any individual in Afghanistan out of the country.
After an onslaught of criticism, she labeled the comment as a cultural reference.
I hate that my words were twisted for partisan gain. I hate that my words gave license to hateful hearts to come out there and direct their hate on social media, not just at me, but a lot of people like me. And I'm the only person out there. I'm the last Afghan woman standing, right? And I have an opportunity to speak with these terrorists who are holding the best of the best hostage. They're holding the most vulnerable hostage. They have, and this was the last day of the emergency evacuation, right? And I'd spent months working on this file and days on the phone with young women hiding behind cars and saying, I'm behind a car at such and such petrol station, can someone come and get me? And I had to say, no, I'm sorry, but if you make it to the airport, there may be a way. And in that moment, I tried to speak to those men in a way that they would understand, in a way that I thought would help. I was just trying to save lives, just trying to save lives. And I hate that that gave license to people who have no idea what it's like to be people like me, the opportunity to be as hateful as they've been. And, you know, I will also say this, those men killed my father, and that I have been branded by a fringe group as a Taliban sympathizer is absurd, but it's hurtful to my family and particularly to my mother, and I hate that. And I'll tell you what I'm disappointed by. Our local Conservative candidate was asked what her opinion was about this, and she had nothing to say. She had no opinion. She called it a distraction. I'm really disappointed in that.
I don't think it's going to make a big difference, to tell you the truth. People who vote for, people who are liberals are not going to move away from her over that. I think she explained it relatively well. It wasn't a smart thing to say, but you can, in the context, you can understand what she was saying.
I think anybody sensible recognizes that the member is not a supporter of the Taliban. On the other hand, she probably regrets the comment.
Despite a long line of Liberal and Conservative MPs, the NDP is hoping to break that streak. And the party believes Joy Lachica is the woman to do it.
Knock, knock. Hello. I'm Joy. I'm your federal NDP candidate.
She moved to Canada from the Philippines as a child and spent 25 years as a teacher, labor leader, and activist.
Have you voted yet?
No, I haven't.
Okay, you're still thinking?
I've pretty much made a decision.
Yeah,
and
well.
Unfortunately, it's not pointing in your direction, but it's definitely not pointing in the direction of the people that we have in there.
Right, well,
for sure.
we really feel that it's time for change.
Yes.
I mean, 6 years is long enough.
Yes.
To expect certain things that were promised and then not see any of it done or very little of it done.
We have a job strategy, a good job strategy that is connected to our fight for climate action based on the climate emergency. Our Green New Deal sees us retrofitting homes, thinking with a long view, job retraining, good jobs, new jobs to support people who have been without work. We need to do all of these things in tandem, and if we can create the good jobs, we can begin to boost that economy so that we can afford things like national pharmacare. And that's how we're going to keep businesses open. It's how we're going to be able to keep schools open. As we're in a fourth wave, we need to make sure that people are cared for, that their public health is being taken care for, and it's the only way to move forward in an era where there may be another virus down the road. We need to be planning, and we've learned a lot from this last year and a half of closure. We don't always know what's around the corner, so we need to prepare and make plans. We need to make sure we have jobs that offset the rate of inflation. That's really the issue when we talk about debt and guaranteed living income and all of that. We need to take care of one another, but in a smart way, where we're watching the rate of inflation and offsetting it with the good jobs that we're creating in a clean economy. We need to make sure that we're using our old buildings and creating renewable energy systems in our city. And Peterborough is a perfect city to do that in. We have a lot of old factories and buildings that could be useful if we have the vision and the plan. We need to catch up with Germany, Denmark, Iceland, all those countries that are light years ahead of us because they've taken those targets seriously. We can do it all as a unit and in an integrated way if we plan for it.
Despite her good intentions, Lachica's connection to the riding does put a chink in her armor.
The disadvantage for her is that she's not a Peterborough person. She hasn't been here very long. Her experiences with teachers' unions, mostly out of Toronto. So she's got a lot of policy background. Again, she knows the issues well. She speaks very well. She's passionate.
We are fighting for rebuilding this economy and supporting folks that are looking for housing. We're wanting to create public health supports, mental health supports, pandemic's been hard on everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we really believe that we need to do more in a quick way to be able to support community members here. It's been a real struggle. So
All right, I'll consider it for sure. I haven't voted yet. So.
The climate emergency, we've got a good plan for that too. So,
despite the criticism, Lachica says she plans to make Peterborough her permanent home.
The one thing that I've learned since coming to Peterborough, I've spent the last year building relationships with community, with organizations, and it's an amazing place. And we all come from somewhere, and you know, life is porous these days. And you know, sometimes we live here for a while, there for a while. I've decided to put down roots here and to be present here. My family, all of us are settling here. And I bring with me my skills, my heart, my energy, and I feel prepared, and I have experience that and fresh eyes that I feel that I can lend to a situation that perhaps other candidates wouldn't have. So I feel that's a real advantage, and that's a silver lining, and it makes me excited because I really love building relationships, and I am gaining some perspective, and I am ready for action. I haven't felt readier about anything else. This is time for action. I've been a politician since 2015 in the education sector, and so I understand what it is to listen, to advocate, to activate, and to create those relationships that are needed to make things really happen on a political landscape. So I feel my fresh eyes and my vision is exactly what's needed in Peterborough, Kawartha, and I look forward to further building the relationships I've already made.
Also hoping to make political gains in Peterborough, Kawartha, is Green candidate Shauntae White.
I'm Shauntae White, the Green Party candidate. We're just in the neighborhood. Nice to meet you too. We're just in the neighborhood introducing ourselves to some of your neighbors.
She's a second-generation Canadian, born to parents from Jamaica and Guyana, and grew up an hour and a half away in Toronto.
The Green Party definitely made climate change its main priority because climate change is the overarching theme that has its hands in all the different sectors, and it's important that we take care of our planet because we only have one. Specific to Peterborough, Kawartha, I think the retrofitting of all the buildings, which is one of the Green Party platforms in regards to climate change, would be a great asset here. We have a lot of older buildings that would definitely benefit from a retrofit. As well, it would help cut down on our greenhouse gases, as well as providing green jobs to a lot of the people here who are really searching for meaningful employment.
White is a recent graduate from Trent University in Peterborough with an honors degree in environmental studies and a minor in political studies.
What really drives me nuts is like working class people like myself. Like we pay like a lot of taxes.
Yes.
But then there are like you hear about billionaires like curtailing the tax system and what, you know, like they know the loopholes and yeah, that really pisses me right off.
The Green Party definitely wants to close those loopholes and make big earners pay their fair share.
But some in the community are questioning her stance when it comes to the pandemic and how it should be dealt with.
Again, she's very bright. She knows the green side, the environmental side issues. The Greens are, in addition to being green, they're fairly libertarian. So she's come out for the, you don't need to tell anybody you're vaccinated, there shouldn't be passports, that kind of side of things.
We believe to protect yourself against the virus. I myself am double vaccinated, and I'm quite proud to say it. Everybody in my family is as well double vaccinated. We chose as a family to be vaccinated to protect those people around us so that we can get back to some sort of normalcy. In regards to vaccine passports, it is a very controversial topic. We don't want people who are unable to get the vaccine to feel alienated or feel as though they have to seclude themselves at home as opposed to getting about with their daily lives, although we definitely encourage anybody who's able to get vaccinated, as well as practicing social distancing, washing your hands, wearing your mask. So that's where the party stands.
The four women representing the four major parties do have one male contender in the mix. A candidate for an upstart party that is being noticed for attracting anti-vax supporters to its cause. Paul Lawton, representing the People's Party of Canada.
And we will ensure freedom from mandatory vaccines and vaccine passports by opposing these mandates and other authoritarian measures imposed by provincial governments.
I would be surprised if he gets more than 3,000 or 4,000 votes.
Despite the dismal projection, it's hard to ignore the weekly demonstrations put on by party supporters, Lawton with ominous warnings for his followers.
Your liberal conservative options this election include further restrictions on your freedom of speech, increasing the $1 trillion federal debt, more corporate bailouts, increases in income tax, carbon taxes, and vaccine passports.
Polls in the area show the Liberals trailing the Conservatives by as much as 10 points. Maryam Monsef's main threat is Conservative candidate Michelle Ferreri. The former reporter with Checks Television is well known in the community, having spent her entire life here. Ferreri recently came under intense fire when it was revealed she was not fully vaccinated. She did agree to an interview to talk about her party's plan, but canceled at the last minute.
But she does have a business background. She's personable. She speaks well. In the debates, I think it has showed that she doesn't have the grasp of the issues across the board that Maryam Monsef or even Joy Lachica does, the NDP candidate.
While candidates hit the home stretch of the election campaign, there's another pressing issue shoppers at the farmers market have top of mind.
We have to do something to help people get off the street, give them a leg up. If that's what they need, we need to give it to them. We're a rich country. There's no reason in the world why people should be living on the street.
Healthcare and the opioid crisis is a major thing in Peterborough. We're having people die all the time, and there's no mental health supports. I think that wasn't covered in the debate the other night, and I think they really need to be talking about that.
Dylan DeMarsh is on the front lines of the opioid pandemic, devastating the city's homeless population.
Over the last 10 years, we've seen a real increase in the number of people experiencing drug overdoses and drug poisonings. The last 3 years have been a major escalation. So 3 years ago, we had lost 29 people to opioid poisonings, which is a really high number in a community like this. But last year, there were 42 people who lost their lives. This year already, we suspect 36 people have lost their lives to opioid poisonings.
Peterborough, like most Canadian cities, has been hit hard by the COVID pandemic. DeMarsh said it hit Peterborough harder than other regions, only fueling the opioid crisis.
I think it's a confluence of factors. I think there are so many pieces that are contributing to this right now. COVID has really driven some pieces of it that are happening right now that we've seen over the last year regarding drug supply, people using in isolation. Peterborough has a very large unhoused population, a lot of very marginalized people living in our community who are experiencing extreme impacts of this overdose crisis as well. So there's socioeconomic factors. We talk about the social determinants of health a lot in our work. Those are the social factors that contribute to the health outcomes that someone experiences. So you're looking at things like poverty, you're looking at early childhood trauma, any early childhood experiences. And we're seeing in Peterborough that these things are all really converging to a point where we have double the provincial average of overdoses happening in our community. We're seeing a high rate of deaths occurring. We're seeing hundreds of calls to paramedics and police for calls to service to support people who are experiencing an overdose.
Opioid deaths are twice the number here in Peterborough than they are in other corners. So we absolutely need to target this. It's not only about places like First Step and the different clinics that we have, but it's about the supports and resources that we absolutely need to come underneath and lift people up. Without those mental health supports, new resources provided with federal funds and a new template for doing that with national pharmacare and dental care. All of those things are so important to uplift those who have been suffering from addiction and mental health issues. And it's something that has touched so many families and all of us in different ways. So we absolutely see that as one of the biggest priorities here.
The Green Party is really pushing for the opioid crisis to be identified as a healthcare issue because it really is, as opposed to a criminal issue. It's important that we raise these individuals up within society. By doing so, we'll not only improve their quality of life, but their sense of purpose in the world. It's important that we support these individuals. So through a creation of a guaranteed livable income, These individuals who make lower than a certain amount would be able to benefit from these systems as well. It would take them off of the social safety nets that Canada is providing to them.
I have seen the faces of those who are fighting their inner demons for years and years in this community. COVID didn't help. People isolated, it did not help. The issue of supply and safe supply is costing lives. 36 people died just this year here, 36 too many. And we've been working to get a safe consumption site here in Peterborough, just downtown by the bus terminal there. And after a lot of waiting and, spinning wheels, the community was able to give the province what they had asked for, what the representative had asked for. We got the Health Canada approval for the site, and now we're waiting for our MPP to deliver on his portion. But there is, like I said, there is a need to address the pain and the suffering that so many people have, and addressing substance abuse, problematic substance abuse, and the opioids crisis is certainly part of the priority for our community.
Here on the banks of the Otonabee River lies Trent University, home to over 10,000 students. And while they return to the classroom after the pandemic turned their lives upside down, many students are paying close attention to the election.
Well, one thing that I've really noticed is how the pandemic has divided a lot of people. Friends, families, and neighbors can no longer agree on basic things, and it's divided people to the point where people aren't talking. And so one thing I'm really interested in with the federal election is how they're going to solve the polarization of Canada and kind of unite people, make compromise and find a way to bring everyone's opinions and views and bring an understanding so that we are all united and on the same page.
Housing is probably a really big one, specifically within this voting district, because it's not just a price issue, but it is definitely an availability issue. There isn't much available in terms of affordable housing, and what is currently considered affordable is consistently going up as the demand for housing increases. The prices are just astronomical.
That housing crunch is something all parties are looking to alleviate. In 2015, the average median household income in the riding was $62,000, with 56% of the population owning a home. But like many parts of the country, the region's housing market has exploded, with prices skyrocketing. Henry believes the current system is not working for the most vulnerable.
The housing that's being created is not helping people who are low income. What's happened is private developers are taking them up.
We need new housing projects that are specifically for groups in our community that haven't had as much access. We know that our low wage earners and families that have struggled economically in this hard time, these are the people that absolutely need access to good affordable housing. So we need new housing projects that are earmarked for groups that absolutely need it. So we look forward to having a tax for the ultra wealthy so that we can begin to focus and target on these areas that are so crucial for families here in Peterborough, Kawartha.
Well, there are about 1,700 more families who have a safe and affordable roof over their heads because of the federal investments that I was able to bring into this community, but there's so much more work to do. As I said, that plan for another 1,400 units is an exciting one, and I'm hopeful that it will no longer be stuck in the process phase, that we can get shovels in the ground as soon as we can. And it's something that every order of government has to be seized with, right? As a federal representative, I can point to a $55 billion national housing strategy and say, folks, every time we apply for funding, we get it, let's go. But if things are stuck in red tape because, developers aren't able to move forward with their portion of it, if the province isn't fully at the table with the wraparound supports and the operational funding, we don't get to move forward as quickly. So part of what I hope we will have an opportunity to do after the federal election and just before a municipal and provincial election is all hands on deck, folks. There are people dying, and there's money on the table, and we've left that money on the table too many times.
Like most Canadians, voters in the region are anxious to resurface from the pandemic and get back to normal. Shannon believes the outcome of the election will likely depend on how you weathered the storm.
I think it's the linked question of the pandemic and the economy, bringing it back. Are you happy with the Liberals and what they've done for communities, individuals, the CERB, small businesses, or are you unhappy about that? Are you unhappy about the pace of reopening over the last year and what might come next, or are you unhappy about it one way or the other? I think those are the driving issues, and I think they're going to be the driving issues nationally.
As summer turns to fall, farmers here at the market and Canadians across the country are preparing for change. A change of seasons and a change of government. In the riding of Peterborough, Kawartha, I'm Nigel Newlove for CPAC.